On this episode of Booked on Rock, he's worked with Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Stanley, Steve Vai, Todd Rundgren, among many others. Gary Shea, he's the bassist and co-founder of the bands New England and Alcatrazz. He's here to tell us all the stories from his amazing career that are in his brand new book, No Bass, No Party. That's next. Welcome back to Booked on Rock. I'm Eric Senich. First-time guest to the podcast, it is Gary Shea. Gary's the bassist and co-founder of the bands New England and Alcatrazz. He has a brand new book out now titled No Bass, No Party. Gary, thanks so much for being here.
Great to hear you. Great to be in Connecticut.
What a small world. Just a quick story to set this up, because this must have been maybe 6-7 years ago. You were on the KISS podcast, Three Sides of the Coin, talking about when you toured with KISS in the band New England, and you said, I'm from Connecticut. Oh, cool. So I go and I Google your name, and there on your website, Southington, Connecticut. Oh my God. That is where I live. Your apartment is literally a 5-minute walk from where I am right now. So I'm going to send you a picture of it when I get a chance.
My family lived there for about 15 years, probably.
Amazing. When was the last time you were in town here?
About 6 years ago.
So not too long ago. Okay. You still have family here?
No, that's why I'm not coming back too often.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations on the book. One review of the book is from J.D. Shipton. He writes, quote, Gary Shea has lived the Wild West days of the music industry on both sides of the Atlantic and is still here to tell the story. You're originally from the East Coast, and at one point you lived here in this town, but you did move on. So let's start with how long you lived here on the East Coast and then what led you out to eventually Boston.
Well, I graduated high school in Connecticut, Southington. I went to Manitowoc Community College for a few minutes in Waterbury, and eventually migrated to Boston to go to school there. And I spent a good 12, 14 years in Boston, but I also moved to London during that time for a couple of years in the early 70s and came back to Boston. And then I went to Los Angeles and came back to Boston again when we reformed New England and lived there for another period of time. So I kind of came and went a few times from Boston. And then I lived in Los Angeles for a long time as well, about 15 years there.
A lot of music in your house growing up. Talk about that when you decided you wanted to play bass, which according to the book was actually when you were living here in Southington.
Yeah, it was kind of a fluke. It was over in Meriden. There was a place called Carl's Electronics right down on Colony Street. You know, mom and pop kind of electronics store back then. There was no Radio Shack. And we were testing the tubes in our amplifiers. And I just bought a brand new Fender Stratocaster guitar for my life savings. It was a beautiful guitar. And it's the most sought after guitar now for a lot of guitar players, early mid-60s Fender Stratocasters. Anyway, I bought a brand new one, had it for about a year. And I'm in this store testing tubes, and up on a wall were a number of used instruments for sale. And one was a bass, and I picked it up and brought it down. It was huge. And I said, this is great. It's like an aircraft carrier. I'm pretty tall, and I thought, this is kind of cool. I mean, the strings are the size of a pencil. And I thought, this is really cool. We plugged it in, and it shook the store. I said, oh yeah, I'm in on this. And I bought it. I had some extra money that I could do that with, and I bought it. And I bought myself a 1965 Fender Precision bass, the same that James Jamerson used on all the Motown songs and a lot of other bass players in the recording business through the 60s, and to this day, actually.
Yeah, I thought it's cool. Actually, you were listening to the bass lines and the songs that you really loved.
Yeah, because the bass is what you kind of move and groove to, and that's what the meaning of no bass, no party. Take the bass out, what do you got?
Exactly.
So the bass is the heartbeat. If people don't play bass, it links the drums and the melody and band together. It's the bridge. Even though usually in the background, not the most boisterous kind of guy in the band. They are the glue of the band. Without the bass, there's no fun. No matter what kind of music, with a country doom, 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 boom, 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 that's the bass. And it goes to any style, whether it's jazz or classical.
Who are some of the bassists that you love? Like, who are some of your, I would imagine John Entwistle and...
Yeah, John was for sure. I mean, who came out right at that time in the mid 60s, 1965, I think. I had the My Generation album, My Generation on there, a little bass solo, and I thought, this is awesome. No one's doing this. The Beatles don't do this. The Rolling Stones can't do this. This is great. This is really cool. And I became an avid Who fan and Kinks fan and Yardbirds and all those English bands like that. They were doing kind of bending the boundaries of the songwriting, using sitars and other kinds of things, effects, distorted guitars. Where back in the 60s, and you listen to a Bobby Rydell record, you weren't hearing that. You know, even the Rockville Rocket, Gene Pitney from Connecticut.
Yeah.
But these bands were, stretching the limits. And then, of course, Jimi Hendrix came out and a lot of other people. So that was the music that I sought. And that's the reason I went to London at one point, was to try and find a group like the Moody Blues or Procol Harum had an orchestrated kind of symphonic rock sound that used the strings and a big sound, as opposed to a trio playing the blues or a country band.
When you were in London, you met some big names like Robert Fripp of King Crimson, Luther Grosvenor of Spooky Tooth.
Right. Yeah. And Spooky Tooth is one of my all-time favorite bands, and I couldn't believe I met Luther. First day I was there, I met a guy in the street, and he said he knew Luther, looking for a bass player. And he wanted to check it out. I said, sure. And I went to a party for a band called, that night, for a band called the Pink Fairies. And I didn't realize that they were anarchists and revolutionaries. And who was at their party but the MC5? So I hung out with all the guys. And that was the first night I was there, and took off from there. I met a lot of named guys that just had, they lived in the same. I lucked out, and by chance had no contacts, just got on an airplane and went.
Yeah, man, that's 1969, I think, right?
Yeah, it was 1972, actually.
Oh, it was 72. Okay.
Yeah, I went to London at that point. Left Boston. I've been in Boston for years, playing in Boston bands. And
that's right. You moved to Boston in 69.
Yeah, they kept breaking up, and I said, I'm going to go to London, see what I can do over there. And I met Michael Corby the first day I was there, and he started a band called The Babies, which had been very successful. And through him, I met Robert Fripp and Luther Grosvenor and a number of people. Found myself one day in a Rolling Stones rehearsal place down in the docks. Big old industrial place, funky. Don't go there at nighttime kind of place, and push the buzzer, the door opens, you go inside. And it was like being in Mars in the 27th century someplace. Everything's white, chrome, and gleaming, and brand new, and $1 million facility. And it's like, this is the home of the Rolling Stones. I go, whoa. My friends in Connecticut will never believe this.
Where in London was that located?
Notting Hill Gate, basically. Kensington High Street, Ken.
You write, quote, 2 ways to see a horror show. You can go to the movies or join a band.
That's right.
And you're referring to the business side of music. You were in a band, going backwards a bit from before you moved to Boston and then London. You were in a band, The Insane, while in high school. And that band started to pick up a following. But your first lesson came while being managed by Gary, let's see if we can get this right, Gary
Presbilski.
Presbilski. And he had a nickname. Was it Steve?
Oh, that was Steve. Well, he was an older friend of one of the guys in the band, and he took out a loan so we could buy a PA system for $1,000, which we did. And then there were some payments missing, and we accused him of stealing from us. And he got so angry, he mixed up stealing with thief. And he said, "You call me Steve?" And we're dancing around him, making fun of him, saying Steve. And that was our first time we parted our ways with our manager.
That was the first lesson that you got to be careful.
Yeah, his tricked out Plymouth Roadrunner had not been working. All of a sudden it was working. And the bank called us and said, we're missing 2 payments for our PA, which he was in charge of. So where's the money for the PA? And he really couldn't tell us. So we put 2 and 2 together and said, oh, this is not good. So that's what that chapter was about. Now that took place at Lake Compounds.
Wow, Lake Compounds in Bristol. Yeah. Yeah, right up the road again from where I'm at here. Going back to London, the time that you were there, things were going really well for you, but then the bomb dropped. You're feeling like things are moving along just great, and then all of a sudden you hear from the Home Office of Immigration?
Yeah, they tracked me down. I was an illegal alien. I had been kind of missing in action. I only got like a 30-day pass when I first got there. I was lying about going to school there, which made everything was fictitious. And the guy gave me a visa for 1 month, thanks. So I disappeared for about 1.5 years, and they caught up with me, and that ensued with me having really to leave the country and come back to Boston, which I did. And the band I was playing in, had a German drummer named Herman Rarbel, and he had the same problem. He went back to Germany and joined an unknown band called the Scorpions.
Yeah.
And I was playing with he and Peter French from the band Cactus and Tom McRooster. And,
Oh wow, Cactus. Oh man, yeah.
right.
I'm a huge
You know
Van Halen
those
fan,
guys.
so I know Cactus well because
Yeah,
Parchman's Farm was the one that influenced the boogie
right.
beat. You know, Eddie and Alex.
Armand and Tim Bogert.
Wow.
They were great. And so I was in with those guys and met a lot of people, a lot of music type people, professional people who were, doing making records. I was right near Island Studios. I could hear Leslie West and Mountain rehearsing through the walls. They were so loud on the street.
Oh, that's cool.
Playing inside.
Yeah. Then you returned to Boston. Eventually, the band New England forms. John Fannin on guitars and lead vocals, Jimmy Waldo on keyboards, yourself, Gary Shea on bass, and Hirsch Gardner on drums. Initially called Fannin, but then your manager Kurt Nerlinger suggested the name New England. Is that
Right.
the story? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I heard about the guys. The band was originally a band called Fatback from North Carolina. And I moved to Coventry at one point with the Boston band. We were there for about 6 months. And a friend of mine went to a club called the Shaboo, Willimantic, and heard this great band from North Carolina called Fatback. And I thought, man. They said they're like, kind of like Yes, kind of like ELP, big keyboards, big drums, big bass, but no guitar player and lead singer. And they're called Fatback. And I thought, whatever. So about 3 years later, I'm in Boston, coming back from England, talking to a friend. She said, I know a band looking for a bass player. It turned out to be this band, Fatback. They had morphed into a number of names, added a bunch of guys, and they were replacing the last original North Carolinian guy on bass, which is where I came in. And I beat out 16 guys and got the gig. And that band played under the name of Target for about a year. And we played every college and bar between Boston and Montreal. And then two of the guys had offered to make a record with somebody else, broke the band up. I moved to LA. And after that record came and went, we formed a band. And we did demos in Philadelphia for 2 years. We rehearsed without playing any place and just paid the rent other means. And eventually we got we had 6 presidents come see us out in the woods in Massachusetts of record companies and offers these multi-million-dollar deals instead of the next big thing. And sounds good to us.
Yeah, things really picked up pace. That's when Kurt enters the picture. Everything starts to really pick up.
He was the regional guy for Electro Asylum Records, for Warner Electro Asylum Records. He helped the Cars get a record deal. He knew the guys in Queen. He'd given our demo tape. We'd sent a tape through him to Brian May of Queen to produce us. And Brian liked the music a lot. And he said if he had time, he'd love to do it. Turned out he didn't at the time, but he drove across London and put the tape in Mike Stone's box, who was their engineer. He's the guy behind layering all those voices for Bohemian Rhapsody and all the Queen albums. He produced the jazz album for Queen. And so we eventually met Michael in New York City and hooked up with he and Paul Stanley. But Kurt, the record guy, wanted to be our manager. And we said, well, you really haven't any experience doing this, so how can I get us to Madison Square Garden? He played a tape for a friend of his who's also a Warner Electric guy at a Kiss gig in Providence, Rhode Island. And this fellow, Rick Alabari, said, who are these guys? And he said, this is a great band out in the woods, and they're really, really good. He said, can you do this live? He said, they're better live. They're heavy live. So he came and liked it, went down to New York, met Bill Coyne and managed Kiss, came like 2 weeks later, went to limousines outside. We played for them. And we played for a succession of 6 record company presidents. Clive Davis came to our house. Clive Davis. He sat right in front of me, right in front of my amplifier, and loved it. Said he wanted to sign us to Arista. Said he just signed the Kinks, but they had no heavy band like us, and they wanted us really bad. And the same thing came from all the other labels, from RSO, from Elektra, from Epic. And we wound up going with a new company called Infinity that was being financed by MCA, which had a lot of money and no other bands. So we thought that was the way to go. They had to make us famous because they got nobody else, which they were off and running, but they ran out of money and broke up. And that killed our second and third record. And band 3 or 4 years later broke up because of that. That was the reason we broke up, was the label folded, not that we were fighting or weren't making music. We're doing great.
Yeah. Again, the business side of things.
It is in. Like I said, it's it's like a deck of cards. There's got to be 52 things all in line. And
Right.
if one thing goes out, the truck breaks down or somebody happens, gets sick, the whole thing goes down, band breaks up. There's so many stories of bands breaking up for a myriad of reasons. Record deals, bad contracts, anything you think of. That's why I said it's kind of a horror show. You think you're doing great and the phone rings, like you're not doing so great. So there's a lot of obstacles to overcome playing in a band like that and making it keep rolling forward and continuing going up. And somehow we managed to get through all that. My friends and I, and we're here today still playing music.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Were there ever periods where you said, "Ah, this isn't going to happen. I give up," or did you just, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am?
I've got a motto: never take no for an answer. Think big and work backwards. And you have to. You got to think you're the best band in the world, and if you have any kind of doubt, then how are you going to sell it to the crowd? You have to believe that you're the best band in the world. You're this band or that band. And you're up against, we're on tour with Journey and AC/DC and Kiss and Foghat and Styx and Cancel, Cheap Trick, Blue Oyster Cult, Brazilian bands, Thin Lizzy. So you're up with those guys. So you better be good. When the time comes, you get a chance to do it.
So different nowadays. I wonder, I mean, there are bands that don't even have a major label behind them, but they develop a following just because of the way things are so different now to distribute your
Right,
music.
right, right. Back then, there was no videos. You had to play live, and you had to be good live, and you had to be able to play live as well as make records. And to make records, you had to be a good player. There was no overdubbing and no doctoring up the music note by note till you get it right. You had to sing it right the first time. You could splice tape together back then, but you couldn't do what they do now, auto tune everything. They can take anybody and sing a song, and the AI guys can make it sound great.
Exactly. Which is why the Bohemian Rhapsody story is just mind blowing because they're using tape. That tape almost got destroyed because they kept
Right.
recording over and over.
Wore it out. You had to sing those parts correctly to make that happen.
Did Paul Stanley get involved through Bill Aucoin?
Yeah, we were looking for a producer. Like I said, we approached Brian May, and we were thinking of Gus Dungeon and all these heavy producers, like in a dream that we'd have some heavy guy like that. And Bill Aucoin suggested, have you thought about maybe Paul Stanley and Mike Stone as the engineer? And Paul had never produced anybody, but he'd done at that time 10 Kiss records probably. He knew what he was doing in the recording studio for sure. So we decided to go with that because we had, like I said, kind of produced ourselves. We were ready to go when everybody came to see us. All the songs nothing really got changed. We took those 16-track demos from Philadelphia, went to Los Angeles and New York and converted to 24-track and did the vocals over. But the arrangements and the music itself kind of stayed the same. So no one came in and chopped things up and had to fire the drummer for 3 days and get some hotshot drummer to play the thing. That didn't happen. We played the parts the way we always played the parts, and it went very smoothly. And Paul was a great coach, got the best performance out of everybody. That was great. We can do it better. And that's how that happened.
Do you think, I'm sure you heard the story that he was in the running to produce Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, but they just weren't on the same page. They chose to go with somebody else. But what do you think he would have done if he produced that album?
Same thing we did with us, is sit there and get the best out of everybody. That's all it is. There's a producer's kind of a coach. Some producers are musicians and can change things, and some producers can't play anything, but they can hear it. Like Clive Davis, he can hear that this artist or that artist can do this or has the capability of doing something and suggest a change. Instead of doing the chorus 2 times, do it 3 times. He can make those kind of suggestions. So there's that color of hiring a producer, what you need. In New England, we hired eventually Todd Rundgren. We were all fans of Todd's from his band Nas in the 60s. I always loved his stuff. And we went up doing the record, and it was just good to have another member, a fifth member in the band with a different voice. And he played guitar on a couple of songs and sang some songs, wrote some lyrics with us, and we had a great time. And that's that kind of producer. Somebody can play anything. He can play the drums, the keyboards, the bass, anything you want to play, he can play it. So we were on our toes, and we did a great record. The whole record was done in 80 hours. All the first takes, and we wrote the week before and recorded in 2 weeks' time. It was mixed, and we're out of there. That's how much we played and rehearsed in those 4 years prior to that.
Don't Ever Want to Lose You was a top 40 single.
Yeah, made top 30 in Billboard. It was on every station in the summer of '79.
Did you know when it was recorded, when it was done, after you wrote it, like this is going to be a hit?
We knew it was a good song. We hoped it would be a hit, and sure enough, it got play and started climbing the charts. And we were just, it was just great. We'd be in Colorado and hear it on two different stations at the same time. Be in a car, going to a record store and play at one station, it's on. Turn to the next station, it's on that station too.
Yeah, what a trip that is, huh? That whole experience, like you say, it's just the whirlwind of it all.
Right, you get out of the car and dance around the car like a Chinese fire drill. Screaming, hooting, hollering. That's a good feeling. And you work all that time for that, 1 second of bliss where you're on cloud nine.
How long had that song been around?
Oh, about maybe a year before we auditioned for everybody. It actually was still in the works. It had no guitar solo. It was written without the solo. And that's one thing Paul said, it's got to have a guitar solo. It's a great rock song. It's got to have a screaming guitar solo.
You did a lot of dates with Kiss, right? About was it 30 dates?
Yeah, 20 something,
Yeah.
25, something like
What was that experience? Any good stories? We got any good Ace Frehley stories?
that. Yeah, yeah. Ace, one day we were in, I think we might have been in Providence, and the four limousines pull in. We'd done our sound check, and they're missing Ace. Ace's car's nowhere to be seen. Where's Ace? Everybody's flipping out. Gene's walking around with his wristwatch going, where's Ace? His car pulls in, and he calls everybody Curly. Ace is a great guy. And he opens the trunk of his car, and he's got this 6 foot span remote control airplane. He's going, hey, Curly, look at this. And he bought this big remote control plane. He wanted to fly it indoors in the arena. And everyone tried to talk him out of it. No, you can't do it. You're going to kill somebody. So
Ace.
that would be Ace. He was a good guy.
Did you guys chat about being from, because he lived in Connecticut for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
right,
Up in Wilton, I think, is where he had a place there
right,
for a
right
while.
around Greenwich. The New York part of Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah. That experience, you talked a little bit about it when you met with Bill Aucoin in New York. What was that experience like?
Well, it was great. I mean, he's a really low key, casual guy, very non-assuming, a little bit of tension, but not really tension because he was a pretty mellow guy. And we played and he loved it. My amp caught fire. We were playing the first two songs and we took a break and I looked at the amp and vibed and said, "You're going to work," and it worked.
Yeah.
We played the rest of the music and he invited us to come to New York City and see their operation. The next day we came to rehearsal. I turned the amp on and it blew.
That's great.
But it worked that day. And he said, I'd like to manage you guys. And do you want to come to New York? So we did. Went down to Manhattan to Bill's place and saw the Kiss off, their office, their whole operation on Madison Avenue. It was pretty impressive. Hard to say no to that. They're impressed of making the Kiss at the amusement park thing, the movie they made.
Oh, Kiss meets Phantom of the Park.
Yeah, yeah. Magic
Yes.
Mountain out in LA.
Classic.
They were doing that.
Classic. While you were rehearsing, working on songs in New England, a U.S. Marshal showed up and gave you and the band a subpoena. So it's going back to the business side of music again, right? You're being
Right.
sued. Tell us about this. Your quote in the book is, the snake had come out of the grass and showed his true colors.
That's our boy Kurt. So we went down to New York and brought Kurt Nerlinger with us. And we told him can't be the manager, but you could be the road manager or some kind of liaison to guys in New York or LA, wherever he went up, but it's not going to be in Boston. And you're not the guy because you don't have any experience of booking. We've all booked dances and college gigs and stuff. We need somebody who can help us. And so we went down together to New York, had a great time. He came back and he was going back down again a week or two later on his own to cut a deal with them. And he came by with a letter of intent saying that he was managing us and we'd enter into a more formal agreement down the road. And he wanted to have that as ammunition with this big business meeting in Manhattan. When we looked at it, we're all like 27 years old, 28. That's a contract. That's a legal binding. We signed this, we couldn't buy. And he said, well, I'll rip it up when I get back. I just need some kind of ammunition. And we said, well, you've been our friend and we think you're okay. We'll take a chance. You come back and make sure you rip that up or we're going to have to come to your house and it's going to be ugly. And he came back and didn't like the deal they offered him and decided to keep that piece of paper. And then one day we were rehearsing and the marshal came and gave each one of us a subpoena for $1 million apiece to go to federal court in New York City. I mean, not Boston, not traffic court, but federal court, Manhattan, big time.
Wow.
Now we got to hire a big time entertainment lawyer, New York to represent us. That's going to cost us 10, 13 grand, 20 grand. And the idiot sued Bill Coyne as well for $1 million and MCA Infinity Records. And I thought, here's where we get dropped like a hot potato. They're going to run from us. And Bill said, no, we're all going to fight for you guys. We got our lawyers. We're going to go after them. And they did. We went to court. We won, gave a little bit of money, never saw them again. But that almost train wrecked the whole thing we'd done for all those 3-4 years of rehearsing every day in the snow in the summer, in this little house in the woods. Almost wrecked the whole thing. So trusting somebody you thought was your friend, that's the hard part. If he's a stranger, that's one thing. He made a bad call, but he was hanging out with us. And he was our buddy, part of the team. You know, you build a team, the bigger you get more and more people working for you, and it's hard to keep everything under surveillance of who's doing what, when, and where, and all for your best interest.
Yeah. After something like that happens, it's got to be hard to put your trust or faith in anyone.
Yeah, like I said, his friends had quit their promo jobs and managed the band Boston, became millionaires. So he thought he was on the same track as that, and that's what his eye was on, was becoming a millionaire with the next big thing from Massachusetts. And we were the next big thing from Massachusetts. The way I called it New England. I said, come on, come get us. If any band around here can take that name, it's us. I grew up in Connecticut. John's from Boston. Tom Schultz from Ohio. The guys in the cars from Ohio. We are from here. And New England's a great name. We're going to use it. And it's a memorable name. So many bands have names you can't remember who they were. So many stupid names out there for rock bands. And same thing with Alcatrazz. You know that name, Alcatrazz. It's just rings. You know, people say, oh, I've heard of it. We've heard of the prison. We've heard of New England, but you haven't heard our band. But the name still sticks. You remember the name.
And that album did really well. The launching party in late 78, you say it was like the Academy Awards. The single I mentioned reaches number 40. Right. Also, Hello, Hello.
Yeah, that was the second single. It's about to come out. And we were at that point we just got on Don Kirsh's rock concert, which is a big thing back then, because the only thing on TV back then was American Bandstand on Saturdays. And then there was Wolfman Jack Midnight Special. And then there was Don Kirsh's show. And we had a video because of Kiss. And back then, in the late 70s, not many bands had videos of whether, if you weren't Elton John or Queen or Kiss, because it cost a lot of money. It wasn't a thing everyone did at that time. So we had the video, and we played on Don Kirsh's rock concert one night. And we all got up. We were doing our second record in the recording studio. Came in the office, about 14 of us, and watching the TV. Here we come, Don Kirsh. This next band, New England, my friend Bill Coyne. Please welcome New England. Yeah, we're all screaming and throwing stuff, you know, and throwing stuff at the TV. And about 4 days later, they got the phone call. The record company just collapsed, and that took that fun away.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. If you've just discovered the channel, thanks for joining us. If you've been watching all along, can't thank you enough for your support. Make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you get updates on latest episodes, video highlights, and more. Now back to the show. You toured with Kiss, Dynasty toured in 79. I'm a huge Kiss fan, but they have their critics, and you said there were artists who had problems with New England only because of your association with Kiss, right? Like Thin Lizzy, Blue Oyster Cult, April Wine, John Cougar Mellencamp. What was their issue, and what kind of things did they do?
Stupid stuff. Just rude things that don't need to be done. Blue Oyster Cult, every night that the stage got smaller and smaller. I had a grand piano in my back, and I literally had 1 foot between me and a big drop off into the stage pit in the front of the stage. So you can just push it back like 9 inches? No, we're not going to do that. But that kind of stuff. Or they say that your time is up. You know, you get say you got like 35 minutes. We got 3 of us watch the same, we got 35 minutes. And you plan your songs to do that, and then have a little space where you run off stage, come back, do the encore. You're still under the timeline. But these guys turn the house lights on and say, that's it, you're done. It's over. And you're going, hey, we didn't get to play Don't Ever Lose You, schmucks. So, like that happened to us with Thin Lizzy. And John, we went back out in the dark and said, you want to hear more? And we played half the song in the dark until they turned the house lights back up again.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm assuming they took themselves seriously as musicians and didn't take Kiss seriously. That was their issue?
Right. Well, Thin Lizzy was different because they did their thing, and they want us to go on first. We were supposed to be special guests. There was a band called Code Blue from LA. It was a new wave band with thin neckties, and they were saying it's not going good for us. We'd rather go first and get it over with. And they said, let us go first. And we said, why do you want us to go first? And they said, because the set change would be quicker. We've got a lot of gear. We said, that's an insult to our crew. Our stuff's in the truck in 12 minutes. All the stuff disappears in 12 minutes. We timed it. Guys practiced loading the truck while we're rehearsing the music inside. We had a great crew. And went to Texas, and I was doing an interview with a guy from Dallas Times with the band. Rang up the hall. You guys aren't playing. They said somebody's sick. Nobody's sick. And they canceled us totally the second time. So we went to a party for a rock magazine that night. All three bands were invited to. And eventually Thin Lizzy showed up, and the guy from Dallas Times was with us, and he came up with a microphone. He goes, why was England bumped? And Phil and I said, well, two reasons. And I jumped up going A and B. And he said, okay. He said, here's the deal. Our band's breaking up. Thin Lizzy's breaking up right now. Nobody knows, but just our last tour. We're breaking up. And we saw your equipment truck open and saw your gear like Pink Floyd. We freaked out. We didn't know who you guys were. And he goes, take us left-handed compliment. We screwed with you guys. We went to the bar, and we became friends forever.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. He said, take us left-handed compliment. We screwed you guys. He admitted it. So, okay. And we came back a month later and played the Dallas Agora and set a tennis record and beat out Cheap Trick's tennis record at that point in 1980, 81.
Wow.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. So the other artists they didn't like Kiss.
Especially Blue Icicle. They're a New York band, so that whole New York band thing, they're all brutal on each
other. Right. Just the competitiveness of it. Yeah.
Right.
So that first album was under MCA. You signed with Elektra. You write, quote, "Oh, Elektra, let the storm clouds begin."
Yeah.
What happened with Elektra?
That got us Elektra. Well, the guys that initially saw us, they loved the band. And when the record company failed, we said, now what? And MCA rang us up, said that they had acquired 44 bands. That Ron Luxembourg, the president, had signed 44 bands in a year and a half. When he said he worked like 4 bands or 8 bands maybe, worked closely with the artists. That was all baloney. He signed 44 bands across the country. And MCA said, out of the 44 bands, we're going to keep 4. You guys and Spyro Gyra, and that's it. Everybody else can go home. So that was cool. So we went to LA to meet with MCA about that whole transition. And they promised us the world and great artwork and great distribution in the stores and promotion and tour support. And that night, went to dinner with Elektra Records. They were out there waiting at the front door of MCA, and we came out of the meeting, said, let's go to dinner. I want to talk to you. So we went there, listened to Elektra make their pitch, and we decided to go to Elektra. We decided to break off from MCA. We felt they were a huge company, and they're putting out 20 albums a week, and the top 10 only has 10 slots to play on the radio. And if you're not Bob Dylan or Rolling Stones, that's number 2, number 3, number 4. For a new band to be in there, it's tough. So we thought a better shot with a smaller company like Elektra. They were, had Queen, they had the Doors, had the Cars. We thought, great. And they swore up and down they were going to do this and do that for us. And when the time came, they didn't do anything for us. Some of the guys had left the company. It was just not happening. And we were right in the middle of, right then and there at that point in time, the Clash and Elvis Costello, and the whole thing hit with the Pretenders. The whole thing came down big time with the whole new wave thing. And the radio started playing all those guys as well. Now we got all these other bands added to the playlist, 1 through 40 or something. And, rock is dead. Bands like The Who are dinosaurs, and the Stones are dead. Led Zeppelin's dead. All these new bands that can't play music are like the great thing right now. We'll see about that years to come, how that works out for that. Might be making money, but as far as musicianship goes, and some of those bands are iffy. Some were great. I mean, guy like Elvis Costello is a great musician. So it's just there were more people, more competition. And that hurt us. And we also had a song called Explorer Suite, like a 6-minute long song, big opus, 2 keyboard players, no guitar, kind of a showcase thingy. And we also had a song called Conversation. It was like Nick Lowe's song, Cruel to Be Kind. It's real acoustic, kind of slower song. Conversation, it's all we need. Simple song. We thought, that's the single. And Lex said, oh no, we're doing the big opus, so we're going to put that out. So we put it out, And they said we were dinosaurs and rock was dead. And we're like Kansas and Styx and those. We're not playing that stuff anymore. You guys are you're old. You're old. You're not happening. Oh, that was when I was 32 or
Yeah.
something. 30,
The ancient age of 32.
ancient idiots.
Well, that was in those days. That was the case. Though. Like the Stones were considered old in the mid '70s.
Right.
They're still going.
Right. When Peter French auditioned for us in London, I was 21. He was 27. He's kind of old, you know.
Right.
6 years difference. It's a big deal when you're 21. So so we went with Elektra. Second record, not so great. Decided to work with Todd Rundgren for the third one. Same thing happened. They just fell down. They just didn't do anything for us. And we picked another song, which was to be a follow-up to Don't Have an Illusion. Todd plays guitar, a harmony guitar part to John's guitar part. It's great. We got Todd Rundgren playing on our song. How cool is this? And we had another song that John had, and he said it was kind of Stay With Me or something. And Todd goes, Rod Stewart's got a song called Stay With Me. Let's make it something different. Let's like Be My Dirty Dream or something. Off the cut remark. We said, that's great. It's great. We'll call it DDT, Dirty Dream Tonight. So we did the song. It's like, you just kind of go, I like Be My Dirty Dream Tonight. Just a fun song. It's a rock and roll kind of song, which a departure for us is more like a Chuck Berry kind of rock and roll thing, simpler rock and roll thing. And we sent the demo to LA, and the lecturer came back and said, the people in the office are dancing on the desks. This is a hit. This is a hit song, big time. You guys nailed it. This is fantastic. This is going to be the hit. We're going, well, what about this other song, Conversation? No, this is it. And so when they put it out, every female program director, music director said we were male chauvinist pigs and refused to play the record. The record stiffed and Elektra dropped us off the label. Now they got no record deal. Thank you, Elektra.
Wow. Man. Then there was the short-lived project with Vinnie Vincent, who would join Kiss in 1983. This was Warrior.
Yeah. So now we got no record company, but we're out there playing colleges and doing great, working on the fourth album. And then John, our guitarist, decided he's going to quit the band. So now we got to find a guitar player that can sing and write songs. It's hard to find. We had a bunch of guys in the wings who were going to come audition for us, one of which was Vinny Cassano, who became Vinnie Vincent in Kiss.
Another Connecticut guy, by the way, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Yeah.
Bridgeport, yeah. Vinny Cassano.
Yeah.
So anyway, he comes to Boston, and and Gene told us that he was great. He was running with them in LA in the studio, but he was too short. He couldn't be in Kiss. We could have him. I said, fine. We got the phone number to call him. He comes to Boston, and he has sent us a demo tape. And it was really good music. It was like foreigner, but a little heavier even. This is great. But we wanted the kind of music we like playing. So he played our stuff. It sounded pretty good. And then we flipped him out, and we had learned his songs before he got there and played them for him. He couldn't believe it. He goes, I can't find guys like you guys in LA at all. This is amazing. What are we going to do? So let's sleep on it. It was late at night. So let's think about this. So next day we decided we're going to go to LA, start a whole new band, drop the whole empire of New England off the cliff, and start a whole fresh thing on the West Coast in LA with Vinny's the guitar player, mostly his songs to get going. And we did that. We just flew to LA. Like within a week, we were out of Massachusetts, never went back again. Gone. And I lived here for 15 years, locked my apartment on Beacon Street and out of here. And now we're in LA rehearsing, and did that for about less than 2 months, maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And that's when Vinny was off to join Kiss for sure. They just changed their mind and said he could be in the band. They changed the name to Vinny Vincent. So now like Jimmy Walden and I are in LA going, now what are we going to do? Now I'm like 32 years old.
What could have been with that band, right? That would have been something special.
Would have been cool, We had stuff going on there. Band sounded great. Great friend.
Doesn't sound like he had a difficult time with Vinny because Vinny's had that reputation, but was he?
But he was quirky back then. He's one of those guys that can't make up his mind. You work on a song, next day it's going to be all scrapped and do it again. Keep rewriting the chapters. Those are great paragraphs. Leave them alone. He's going to rewrite the sentence, put in some more commas. Stop. What you wrote was great. Keep it there. Go to the next chapter. But he couldn't do that. But then he got progressively crazier as the whole thing went up into the star world. He just went crazy and started, he got himself kicked out of the bands when he did. It's too bad.
Can you see that happen? Like fame and money, that could do that to somebody pretty easily, huh?
Yep. Start believing that stuff, telling you're great. You're the god. You're the next thing since sliced bread. And yeah, you got money, and everyone tells you. And then everyone tells you you're great because they want to work for you. They want a job or whatever. They tell you you're great. Not going to tell you your shoes untied. They don't want to get fired.
How would you remain grounded through those years when things were going really great, when things weren't going great?
Just don't listen to it.
Yeah.
I just knew it could end in one phone call. It happened a few times already. One phone call, the whole thing goes down like a deck of cards, and just don't believe that this is happening, And we know we made some money. We did great, got great gigs, great. Uh, what I think the best thing, we got great respect off the other bands that we were a good band, that we were part of the club. That was rewarding, not so much the monetary part of it. But when you do get in that, you get separated from like your friends and your family and in this other world now. And it's different, you know, and the money makes you greedy and you start doing things that maybe may not be above board to keep it going. And well, the actors in the acting world do the same thing in LA. I lived in the Hollywood Hills for a few years, and be a beautiful house, and it's rented by some up and coming movie stars, got a hit show going on. The show goes down after 13 weeks, and he's out of here. Somebody else moves in. They got another new TV show. New actor living there. Got the Lamborghini and all that stuff, and the hot this, they have the hot boyfriend, hot girlfriend, going to all the parties in Beverly Hills, and they disappear. So you go up and you go down fast, and you're going up's easy. Going down is a lot faster journey.
But also maybe it's because you're an East Coaster, you come from a more humble beginnings too. I think that helped a lot.
Well, you meet the same people on the way down that you met on the way up. So, I mean, you want to burn bridges and be nasty, you can do that, but it's not going to do you well if something goes wrong. And I'm not going to have any friends that because of that. So don't burn bridges. Don't be nasty to people. We're always pretty accommodating. Any band ever opened for us, we were always accommodating to do it within reason. To you never mess with any bands like that.
What about temptations, drugs, alcohol, things like that?
That's all there. We went through those cycles of that. And some do better than others. Some can just say, I'm going to walk away from that. That just, it's not good, which most of us did. We went, the guys in Kiss, they had just totally gone vegetarian at that point. I don't think Paul was even drinking Coca-Cola at that point. He just went cold turkey on the whole thing. They said, whoosh. They saw what was going on. They said, no, if we're going to keep doing this, we're going down the wrong road if we keep up. Well, and Ace, of course, decided he's going to keep going.
Yeah, Ace and Peter. Yeah, that was the thing.
Now his health is not that great because of that. Still there, and that's what can happen.
You always move forward and opportunity arises again. How does the band Alcatrazz come together?
Well, Jim and I stayed in LA, thought nothing to go back to Boston for. We're going to stay in LA and play hardball. Maybe one of us will get a gig with some famous band and do well. Maybe we'll get a band in the same band together. It'd be kind of cool. I put an ad in a local paper, and my friend Michael Monarch from Steppenwolf, who I'd played with in London, he said, he's going to get all these crank phone calls from these people. I said, yeah, but answer one question. Is the ad free? And he said, yeah. So I put that in the paper. Just said rock bass player, X name, seeks recording studio thing or touring. And I got about 50 phone calls of people who were just kind of starting out and had a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody at Capitol Records. And that we're going to play at the Troubadour, an open mic night or something. So I'm kind of beyond that stuff. But one night the phone rang, it was an English voice yelling at me saying, did he manage Graham Bonnet from Rainbow and Barry Mark Barlow from Jethro Tull and Zal from Nazareth, the bass player? Are you the bass player? Screaming at me. Who this guy is? He's screaming at me. I was about to go out the door to go someplace. I said, yeah, I'm the bass player. I could do that. And I said, you probably never heard of us, but I played in a band in New England. He goes, you were in Providence, Rhode Island at ELO eating all the shrimp backstage. And I said, that was me. I didn't eat all the shrimp though. I don't eat that much shrimp. But I was at that ELO show, and he was a road manager for Electric Light Orchestra. So he knew who Jim and I were from New England. And New England was that big reason we got our record deal. Not so much Graham's contact to Rainbow was the fact that New England done so well for MCA. And a guy who worked for MCA, an executive, told our manager, Andy, that we should check out this label in Orange County called Rockshire. a subsidiary of MCA, and we did. We got a record deal just on us in the band, no demo. And one weekend we got the news that Barry got offered to play on Robert Plant's first album from Led Zeppelin, playing his first solo record. What are you gonna say? No.
Yeah.
So he's out of here. And Zal was on tour with Elkie Brooks somewhere in Africa. Can go hold of him. So we had to find a guitar player and a drummer over the weekend in Los Angeles, where the deal goes down. It doesn't go down; it goes out the window.
No pressure there.
So we that first night we got auditioned Lawrence Jabbar, who played guitar for Paul McCartney.
Wow.
No slouch on that guitar.
Yeah.
And, quiet guy, short hair. We thought he was just some guy from the last band, and you got to get out of it because Lawrence Jabbar's coming, man. He's coming. It was him. It was small enough. No, no, no. Sure enough, we had all our stuff set up, and we were doing a Russ Ballard song called SOS that Graham had done on a solo record. And Cozy Powell played the drums on us, SOS. And the first thing he said when we were done is, "Can you please tune down?" It was like, wrong. And the manager, of course, is running around at 2 a.m. going, "That's it, Wings, New England Rainbow, I can sell this." Yeah, sure you can, but he's not the right guy. We'd be killing each other before the first gig. Can't do that. And he went to the next day to a neighbor, young guy at a record store. I said, "Who's the hot guy?" And he said, "Yngwie from Sweden. He's playing this band called Steeler." So Andy rang him. He said, "You want to audition for Graham Bonnet?" And Yngwie couldn't believe it. He thought it was a crank phone call because he loved, all the Swedish guys love Deep Purple. They know all that stuff backwards and sideways, and they worship Richie Blackmore. And Graham was part of that family, and Yngwie didn't believe it at first. And he came down at night and played for us, and he nailed all that stuff. He could play any Deep Purple song or Rainbow song he could shake a stick at. And he became the guitar player. It took us a longer time to find drummers. We auditioned about 10 drummers over a couple of months' time, and got Jan, who had been in Alice Cooper's band. And so did our first record. That became Alcatrazz. And I named the band Alcatrazz one day, sitting around talking about band names, the same thing about memorable names. I think they wanted to name it Dungeons and Dragons and go the heavy metal medieval thing. We're going, it's like 1963. Our name was a little blip on the map. And I said, "I don't want to do that thing." And I said, "It'd be cool. After being in New England, we're always stuck in the record store between New Riders of the Purple Sage and Olivia Newton-John. Nobody goes to the N section, the O section of the record store. They go to A, they go to Z, whatever." I said, "It'd be cool if name starts with A, like ABBA, or Aerosmith, AC/DC." And out of my mouth came the word Alcatrazz out of nowhere. And everyone jumped up. Genius, brilliant, genius. I said, "Shea, you know." I nailed it. So we decided to put an extra Z on there for copyright reasons with the state of California, which owns Alcatrazz. And we
Okay.
we grief off them. We're selling T-shirts, say Alcatrazz, and we'll get arrested. Didn't want that. Put the extra Z on there. And that's how it became. It was a band. It was a mutual band between myself, Graham Bonnet, and Jimmy. There was no side guys. So we hear all this flack. Now we just went through a major trademark lawsuit just last month. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. It finalized about 6 weeks ago. We now own the name. And Graham Bonnet doesn't. And a lot of fans write in and say, "Oh, it's his band. Without him, it's nobody. And you guys are nothing." And so my only one retort to that is side guys don't sign record contracts. And my name's on all those record contracts. So there's that. And it's hard when bands lose people and people go away, like Ace fans. They don't want to see Vinnie Vincent. They don't want to see other guys. They want to see Ace, and look at Sammy Hagar and the whole Van Halen thing. That's a big mess.
Sure.
You got two camps warring and who's better. So we got in Alcatrazz, we have that because now we have a different singer than Graham. Graham quit the group out of the Clear Blue, which he's great at doing stuff like that. He's a very difficult guy to work with because he's one of those guys that lives in a bubble somewhere in the dream world. And, just want to get paid, not do anything for it.
Yeah.
you gotta work.
No Parole from Rock and Roll came out in '83, now a classic. If you had to choose between that one or the New England debut, I mean, they're both great albums. What's more from a personal standpoint?
Yeah, I'm really proud 50-50 that they're both two different styles. And it's great to be, say, I'm the bass player on both those records. Like the New England stuff, for people that play music, I play everything with my fingers. On the Alcatrazz music, I play with a pick. A lot of bass players can't do both, won't do both. there's a warning thing about that with bass players. You never use a pick. It's like just use most songs you're on the radio they're playing with a pick in the studio. All the Beach Boy records, Beatle records, Yes records, it's a pick. ELP, Pink Floyd, it's a pick. Led Zeppelin, a lot of times pick, and sometimes fingers. So you learn how to do both of them. If you're in a studio, you might be asked to do both ways. So that's part of the repertoire is be able to do that. So I'm proud that I did two records that are kind of different from each other. It's not the same thing. Like going from Ronnie Dio to Ozzy Osbourne wouldn't be a big major thing musically. Same kind of style. But if you went from Ozzy Osbourne and joined ABBA, that's different.
Yeah, that would be.
That means you're adaptable and you've got a wider palette of information you can choose to play that kind of music. So
And then you work with a guitarist who works with David Lee Roth, Stevie Vai. So
yeah.
let's talk about that, his arrival. This is because, was there falling out with Yngwie?
Yeah, well, the manager, speaking about drugs, swore he had managed it. Robert Palmer and Bay City Rollers at one point, and the whole thing went up his nose and lost his family. They got back together again. He swore he'd never do it again. Sure enough, we get going. He's doing it again and bringing Yngwie with him and telling me the best things on sliced bread. Don't worry about the other guys, And like in Japan, they were saying Alcatrazz featuring Yngwie, and Graham saw that hit the roof. And so that became a problem. And Yngwie just started getting more out of hand, like just jumping around all over the place. Just play the song. Just do your solos and go crazy, but don't be running around like a crazy person. And he just got a little hard to deal with. This is not good. And Graham reacted rather than taking the reins and saying, "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to do this, or you're out of here." He just went into a shell and just hated Yngwie, and everything's bad, and come out of the house. So now we got a problem. We said, well, it's obvious we got to change guitar players. Whether he's going to be famous or not, that doesn't matter. The group is more important than the single guy doing that. There's other guitar players on the earth besides him. So we put the word out, and Jimmy found Steve Vai through David Rosenthal, who played for Rainbow, and I think played for Billy Joel for a while. And he mentioned Steve Vai from Frank Zappa's band. And we did some auditions in Burbank one day, told Yngwie on a Sunday there was nothing going on, no interviews or anything, to stay home. Girlfriend's about 15 from Sweden. Really young. He stayed home. Meantime, we're in Burbank. We got all the stuff set up, the whole back line, the whole thing. And we auditioned Kristen Pelletieri, who's like a Connecticut guy. And he played everything like Yngwie, like perfect. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And Steve played differently. It was kind of quirky, but interesting. So this is kind of interesting. So we kind of pegged this rainbow clone band called Alcatrazz. We want to be our own band. And I like the idea that the music could change a little bit and be more adventuresome. And the second record was. I love the second record. We had problems with Capitol Records at that point, but the music was great, I thought. But a lot of people liked Yngwie European style as opposed to Steve's style, which is a little more American kind of sound. But they're both amazing players, and they've both been playing together on the G3 circuit for the last 30 years or something. Yeah, they're in Albania tonight. He and Joe Satriani on tour together, and they're on the road right now as we speak. We try to get Yngwie on some of our recent Alcatrazz records, and his manager says his wife, she wanted $1 million to play on one song. It's like, come on.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Even if David Lee Roth said that, he wouldn't get it. $1 million. But one stupid song. It'd take you half an hour to go into your studio house on Pro Tools we have today, record into your computer, send a file to wherever it has to go. It'd be over with.
It's similar to Vinnie Vincent, like they're their own worst enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yngwie, he was just thick. He's young and excited. And like his favorite guitar player was Al Di Meola, who knew. And I said, you should tell people that. That's really interesting. Oh, no, Mon. It's always Richie Blackmore, Lee Roth, and whatever. But you should tell him Al Di Meola. And who's his favorite band? No one ever gets this answer. His favorite band was Kansas.
Really?
He hired the producer, Jeff Glickman, to do a couple of Yngwie records back in the late 80s, early 90s. He liked Kansas so much. I said, you should tell the people in interviews you like Kansas. He always thought Richie Blackmore was mysterious and everything. And Graham said that Richie was just shy. He didn't like doing interviews. He liked being in a corner. He was afraid of people. And Yngwie took that as being you had to be mean and nasty and say bad things to people. And said, don't do that. That's not the way to go. So he's had that cloud around him. He still has. It was his birthday yesterday or the day before. And that's the other things on Facebook, hate or do hate, no hate, do hate, 50-50. And it could be a lot better in his favor if he didn't come off like that. But he insists on doing it. He's a great guy. He's a funny guy, really talented guy. He can play any kind of, he can play the blues.
Yeah.
He can do anything he wants. He knows how to play the guitar.
Stevie Vai on the other side of that is a guy who seems like super easy to work with, super humble, and
yeah, and he had done 7 albums with Frank Zappa before he met us.
right.
Did the record, went to Japan together and played it. We did a tour in the Southwest live. That was great. And then he got the offer from David Lee Roth to replace Eddie Van Halen of all people.
Yeah.
So we had Vinnie Vincent going to Kiss, Steve going to David Lee Roth, Yngwie.
Yeah, there's a guy, Frank Myers, his name. He was friends with Dweezil Zappa when they were kids, like 12, 13, 14 years old. And he told me a story that Stevie Vai came over the house one day and they went for a ride somewhere, and Stevie put in a cassette and he goes, hey guys, check this out. And it was like Yankee Rose and, you know, the stuff on you. He's like, yeah, I'm working with David Lee Roth now. And Frank was like, what? He's like, yeah, don't tell anybody yet, but it's coming out soon.
Right.
Yeah, he was telling that story.
Steve, when we met Steve, he had a trio with Stu Hamm and Chris Frazier. Chris Frazier is in Foreigner at the moment, and Stuart Hamm plays with Joe Satriani. He had a song called The Attitude Song. It's just bizarre, little crazy thing of changing time signatures because they could. And that was the first floppy disk the Guitar Player magazine ever put out way back in the world of floppy disks. They said, for our first issue of floppy disks, who can we get? Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Alan Holdsworth. They said, let's get Steve Vai from Alcatrazz. Oh, this is cool. We're off to a good start here. Take that, you know.
Yeah.
We're gonna maintain. But then we lost Steve, and it got harder. We got Danny Johnson from Rick Derringer's band, Rod Stewart's band. And the third album was more of a pop record, and it was, again, the times were changing. It was the late 80s. MTV was all over the place, and Duran Duran, the whole romantic thing was in full swing, and everything was out there. But we're up against now Boy George and all kinds of crazy stuff on MTV. Thousands of bands out of the woodwork. They're all good. A lot of them great bands, you know. I like a lot of those bands, you know. That's the competition.
Sure.
And the production was so-so, and the main problem I wrote about in the book, as far as the music business goes, is that Graham wouldn't play ball with the A&R department of Capitol Records. They had just done Heart, and that record, they didn't write any of the songs. They were given most of the songs by outside songwriters. And they said, you guys could use a couple of these songs, take advantage of it. You know, kids don't care who wrote the song. If they like the song, they like the song. Nobody cares who wrote it. But the people that write songs want to put their name on it to get royalties if it's a hit. If it's not a hit, what's happened? And Capitol came, asked us to do some of that, and Graham flatly said, no way, not in this world, not going to happen. Walked out of the room, said bad things about Capitol Records and interviews. So they dropped the band.
Do you remember who it was, like a Desmond Child, or who was it that they were going to bring in?
Like Bryan Adams, those guys. Kiss had Desmond Child, right? I Was Made for Love. I love that song.
Yeah.
I like that song. They played I Was Made. It's a great song. Whether it's Kiss playing it or Foreigners playing it, it's a good song.
Look what Desmond Child did for Bon Jovi, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. Those songs.
So Living on a Prayer and those songs.
Right.
Yeah.
Outside musicians, a whole bit. So it's about the songs, you know. And Yngwie wasn't a song person. He was more flashy guitar solo. He was a guitar solo. And we were coming from a song world, right? New England had a lot of songs. All our songs are different. You can go through all 4 New England albums, and you're not going to find one song that sounds like the other song is like the other song. One's got an acoustic intro, and one doesn't. One's got piano, those doesn't have piano. Different keys. Some bands, all 10 tracks sound the same band. From one track to the 10th song, it's second track, third track, fourth track, same thing all the way through the record. That's not great songwriting, particularly. But New England had that going on. John wrote some really great songs.
When you see bands like U2 or these bands that have had the same lineup from day one. That must amaze you, right? Knowing how many things have to happen and they all have
Those
to be on
guys
the same page, and you have to not have that one guy who's a pain in the ass who's throwing a wrench into everything.
are a great example. They never played in other bands. They were a high school band that grew up together, and they got ridiculously famous. They still haven't played anybody else.
Yeah, like
And
ZZ Top before sadly
right.
Dusty passed, but those three guys. I mean, it's
Well, who's ZZ Top's new bass player? Elwood.
yeah, Elwood, yeah.
He was our guitar tech with Steve Vai.
Oh, seriously?
He was 19 years old. We took him to Japan. He was our guitar tech from Boston, and he was our guy. Fixed my bass, put bridges on the bass and stuff back there. And he's been working for ZZ Top for about 20 years as their guitar tech. And when Dusty Hill passed away, he said, "Get Elwood. Don't audition anybody else. He's been with the band for 20 years. He knows the songs backwards. He's a good guitar player and bass player." And they did. They just got Elwood to come on and play bass.
And does he also do the vocals for
And he sings.
Tush
Sings a bit.
and songs like that?
Background stuff. Yeah. And he was our guitar tech back in 1984.
It is a small world, right? Rock and
Yeah.
roll can be a small world. Yeah.
It's a big network and everyone knows somebody else. And I can drop names all day long, guys. I've met bands like Angel and stuff, and these guys and those guys, and a lot of bands out there. And that's word of mouth, especially back then, was how you got a gig. Funny story, we were in with the third Alcatrazz album looking for a guitar player. I'm thinking, what do you get? And I remember a guitar player that I played with in Boston a long time ago from Washington, D.C., who was friends of the guys from Angel, because they're all from D.C. guys, and they were in Boston. This guy named Hal. He was a great guitar player, blonde hair, played all that Richie Blackmore stuff flawlessly. He was a super duper great lead guitar player. And I had back then my phone book, I had his mother's phone number, which is you had got to get the mom's number to keep track of everybody. Otherwise, you'll lose them. I called a number in Virginia someplace. And I said, "Hey, it's me. And what's Hal doing?" "Oh, he's in England." "Oh, good. Can I have his phone number?" And she goes, "Well, he's playing in the band." And I said, "Really? Do you know the name?" Thinking, she's an older lady, she might not know what band it is. She goes, "Yeah, Dire Straits." I said, "He's in Dire Straits."
Whoa.
He is. Hal Linus. And so he was in Dire Straits. I went to a record store, looking at the record, going, "Damn, there he is, short hair." He had long blonde hair, and, and there he was. And we're still friends. He gives me a lot. I gave him some numbers of some friends of mine in London, and he gives me credit. He said, "I wouldn't be in Dire Straits, Gary, if you hadn't given me those phone numbers. So I owe my being in the Dire Straits and all my great fortune to you for helping me out when I was nobody and all that."
Awesome. And there is some good news with Alcatrazz, right? There is a new label, a new album due out.
Yeah, we're on Braveword Records now. New album's going to come out next 2026. There's a tour in Scandinavia starting in November through Christmas. Bunch of dates in Finland, Sweden, Belgium, Germany. Bill Alcatraz. My book has been doing great on Amazon. I've encouraged anybody that gets to read the book to please leave me a review. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll do the same. No Bass, No Party. It's out now, and you can find it wherever books are sold, Amazon, all the usual places, and look for it at your local bookstore. And you can always find your nearest independent bookstore through the website bookedonrock.com. And
it's an easy read. It's not like a 600 pages of fine print like the Bible or something. It's bigger print for old people like me.
it's a super fun read.
It's more of a tabletop book, so the print is larger for a reason they did that format. Not that I know anything about books, but this is my first book, and I got lucky with that.
How long did it take you to write it, by the way?
About 6 months.
Okay.
I started writing just page one. What was one incident that happened? And I thought I'd make like sketches. If here's a little one thing happened this month, and a few months later this other thing happened, rather than a whole chronological thing every day, what I did. And I had like 50 chapters, each with a different name. And the publisher kind of crammed them into a 24 chapter format, so it kind of gets kind of weird. You're in this storyline that says chapter 14, but the story is still going.
Right.
There's no break.
Yeah.
But that's small things. What do I know about book publishing? And Books We Love in Alberta has been really good to me, doing virtual tours for me, book tours, virtual book tours, and things like that.
And now you got a little bit of time before the Alcatrazz thing gets back up and running to promote the book.
Yeah, doing a lot of traveling myself. My wife and I love to travel, so we're going to Portugal in September for about a month. Trip around, with them, have a good time.
And you live in Florida now?
Yeah, I live on Amelia Island,
Yeah.
which is the very northeast corner of Florida, right in the Georgia border in the Atlantic.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do this. Like I said, it's just a small world story, man. I just cannot believe still that you grew up about 5 minute walk from where I am. It's just, it is, yeah.
Riding my bike down, a bunch of kids chase me. We're going to kill you. We're going to kill you.
Well, the high school you went to is now an elementary school.
Yeah, that whole thing is so depressing. Last time I went back there, Center Street's one way, and well, the Pipe restaurant's gone.
It's gone.
Basically, it's been painted.
I know, man. It is a very, very different
It was a pretty crummy street when I was. I remember my girlfriend in high school had lied to her father where I lived. I lived on Liberty Street.
Liberty
It was
Street.
like
Yeah.
Skid Row. It was Skid Row back then.
Yeah.
Winos and people on welfare across the street from us, and all that.
Yeah, now you where you lived is next door to my dentist. So next time I have my dentist appointment, I'm going to say to the people in the office, I know somebody who used to live there.
I
He's
worked in cash and carries for
famous.
about 3 years.
Yeah,
Doing this cash and carry, I was the guy
that's
damping
awesome.
all the macaroni and the olive oil, bagging groceries and bringing them up to the car.
That is cool. Well, Gary Shea, thanks so much again. No Bass, No Party. That's the name of the book. Go out and get it. It's a great book. It's a fun read, and we look forward to the future of Alcatrazz, man. We're excited about this. Fans, I'm sure, are super excited, longtime fans.
Like I said, I think I've hammered all my friends buy my book, trying to find some new people.
So I find some new people to pick up a copy. It's well worth it. And again, you can get it wherever books are sold. Thanks so much, Gary.
Thank you, Eric. It's been great talking to you.